Did the Pac-2 and the Pac-12, as we know it today, ultimately win yesterday? Now, you might have heard the ridiculousness out there that, oh, the Pac-2 is going to get hundreds of millions of dollars. We told you that was not happening. In fact, after the agreement that was solidified yesterday, pen to paper, the Pac-2 will get $65 million from the exiting 10 members, and now we'll be able to move forward. I believe that this is a win. Is it the $100 million we had heard about? Is it the wild, I'm an idiot podcast host, they're going to get $350 million? It's not. It is certainly not. But what this represents is a future that can be had for the Pac-2. That's what we call a win. With how close this conference was to oblivion, with how close the Pac-12 was to not being in existence any longer, with how bad Oregon State and Washington State found themselves just, inexplicably in no man's land, to now be able to take $65 million and move on with your relationship with the Mountain West, I think is an unequivocal win. Now, the reality is you've got to give the Mountain West $25 million for your scheduling arrangement. So now your, $65 million is $40 million, but you'll take that. You'll take that because you own the brand, you own the media rights, and you have freed yourself from those 10. Jake, I don't think there's any other way to spin it other than to say that is a win.
Absolutely. And I think that, for these two schools, you've secured your future on some level. I mean, you at least are now in a place where, you can start moving on to the Mountain West side of the conversation. You can start moving on to, how do we get to a better place in the long term? How do we get to, competing for the college football playoff spots that are now somewhat available to us? Because I think that's the other side of this conversation that nobody in Washington State or Oregon State land wants to talk about, which is you do have access. And the Mountain West, while it is a great conference, is not nearly as good as the Pac-12 that we knew was. And so if I'm these two schools, I'm looking at this and I'm saying, okay, great. So now we finally moved on from, all the court proceedings and this negotiation with the schools who left, and all that nonsense is now behind us, right? We understand the money we have. We understand the money that's got to go to the Mountain West for the scheduling alliance. And now we can get on to progressing into the future. And frankly, for Washington State, getting on to the business of figuring out how exactly you're going to fix this athletic department budget situation that you're still dealing with, which would be that you're running, by most people's estimates, at a $70 million deficit. So that's what I think is fascinating about this situation, because if schools like Washington State and Oregon State can find their way into just one college football playoff spot, every couple of years. I'm not even saying they're an every year team. I'm not saying that, magic's going to happen. But if you can just find your way in once every 5 years, you're going to be fine for a long time. That's more than enough money for you to survive. So I'm not really here for the Cry Me a River stuff today with, Oregon State and Washington State fan. I think you're in a not the worst spot you could be, but I certainly think that you have a path forward. It's not ideal, but you have a path forward.
But I think you have to take that as a win. I think in this scenario, that's a win, because if you're Oregon State and Washington State, it was not an option to lose control of this conference, because where were you going to go? I mean, you could not find a home in either the Big 12 or the Big 10. The ACC, it seems like, was never really an option, although I guess had you lost control of the conference, maybe it would have developed. But this is the best case scenario. And I think when we talk about the positivity here and we talk about the ultimate positive outcome, this is it. You were never getting the pie in the sky, hundreds of millions of dollars. That was never going to happen. We've been telling you on this show since October. There was never a scenario where the remaining members of the Pac-12, Oregon State and Washington State, were walking away with hundreds of millions of dollars. That was not going to happen. And if you look at the filings in the agreement, John Wilner posted this on his Twitter feed. And if you don't follow John, you really should. San Jose Mercury News and many others. You see that these are the financial arrangements. And what you see here is that there is an initial 50 and then another 1.5 million. And if you do the math, 1.5 million times 10 is $15 million for a total of $65 million. And essentially what you have here is the exiting 10 members can vote on anything that impacts the conference up and until the fiscal year 2024 comes to an end, which is basically June 30th. And after that point, the exiting 10 members have no right to monetary claims. They have no right to vote on anything that has to do with the future direction and course of the Pac-12. This simply was a divorce, and this is the financial settlement of that divorce. And I think, again, it's why I say this is the best outcome for the Pac-2. And I think that the bigger question now is, can the Pac-12 as a brand and a conference survive? You've done the pragmatic things. You have fired George Kliavkoff. You have, basically what you have done is you have set a course forward. You are going to have to settle litigation. I think that's still hanging out there. And again, the people that want to tell you they're getting $300 million, they're not. And this litigation, as they said, well, the conference is going away, so those litigations go away. They do not. They are keeping the conference intact. The brand lives on. Those filings and those lawsuits have to be settled. So there is some bidding to be done. The Holiday Bowl is probably the most prominent one. And UCLA is involved in that. And the exiting 10 members are involved in that. And they are going to probably have to pay their bid on that unless somehow it gets settled or dropped or whatever the eventuality is.
Right.
The likelihood is you're going to come to a settlement because you have got to get all past business handled. You've got to get that cleared out.
And I think that, the getting through all that nonsense, all that, we'll just call it like red tape, if you will, all this stuff that's, sort of needs to just be handled so you can get on to, what your future is going to look like. I think, that they need to finish that, and they will. And I think it's important for, Oregon State and Washington State to get the 10 who are leaving to pay for as much of that as possible. That's got to be your strategy. And obviously, like you said, when it comes to like stuff like the Holiday Bowl, of course, the 10 who left are going to be responsible.
You're contractually obligated to it.
So it's not like they got to get them to pay for stuff. They're contractually obligated. So I just think that the narrative shouldn't be, oh man, like, the Pac-2, won or didn't win or this or that. It just simply is, hey, this process is played out now. They got about what everyone thought they would get.
Yeah.
And now it's time to figure out, okay, what's the best future they can create? Because yeah, the Mountain West is a good spot. I think you could do a lot worse than the Mountain West. I mean, it's a solid conference, but I think when it comes to the Pac-12 as a brand surviving, that's where it gets kind of tough because you don't have a way to get the brand out there. You obviously don't have a TV deal, of course. You don't have something that could really catapult you forward. And so that's why when it comes to like the tournament, as an example, this year, that's why it was so important for the Pac-12 to do well in the tournament, because all that money goes to these two.
Well, and I also think you have to remember that you have 2 years to figure this out now. You have a scheduling alliance in football and basketball that basically makes your life a lot easier. And I think you have 2 years to try and build something that either is a merger or my guess is you just bide your time and you try to make an opportunity when the ACC melts down, or you try to make an opportunity, to put something together with the Mountain West that can get you a seat at the table.
Right.
Because for the next 2 years, all you have to do is be one of the top 12 teams in the country. Oregon State is certainly capable of that, although you've had significant personnel changes there. We'll see. But I think Washington State showed you they can compete in basketball every single night. So they're going to have access to the NCAA tournament. I think the biggest question is what happens in the next round of realignment with the Pac-2, because these two remaining institutions now are hanging on to the Pac-12 because that's all they've got to hang on to. But you can't tell me if the Big 12, the SEC, the Big 10, somehow, some way are like, well, now we got to add Oregon State and Washington State. If the phone rings, you're answering.
Right.
There is no question about that. I do not believe that there is a home for Oregon State or Washington State in the Big Ten. We reported first and exclusively now what everybody else has reported, that Scott Barnes called everybody and their brother at the Big Ten trying to get a conversation, and he could not get a conversation. He tried and tried and tried, could not. Made every single effort to get Oregon State into the Big 12 and could not move the needle.
Yeah.
Because I think last fall, there wasn't a conference that was willing to go to 20 so readily. There wasn't a conference that was like, the Big 12 certainly wanted nothing to do with 20 last fall. And I totally understand that.
Well, and I think when you look at the negotiations that have gone on with the college football playoff and this conversation around ESPN and the TV contracts, like being at 20 doesn't really help anybody. I'm not going to say it hurts you, but it definitely doesn't help you. And I think it certainly adds a ton more work to your scheduling and trying to figure out
just the logistics in general. And I think this is also part and parcel of the UConn conundrum. Nobody wants to pay for UConn football because UConn football does not make money for your conference. It is a loss leader. There is no doubt about that. Now, would you love to have, Mr. Hurley and his UConn men's basketball program? Would you love to have the Lady Huskies in your program, in your conference? Absolutely, you would. There's no doubt. But at what cost, right? So there's no doubt, as we again reported last fall, UConn and the Big 12 had extensive conversations. They were never able to figure out a financial framework of how to make that work. The big question is, what is going to be the tipping point of having Gonzaga join the conference? Because you don't have to worry about subsidizing financially with Gonzaga. They don't have a football program, and their other sports are fantastic. Gonzaga is a very good athletic department without football, which I think in a lot of scenarios is a win for the Big 12, simply because this team's in the Sweet 16 again.
Yeah.
And it's not a fluke. And I think you're looking at a situation where it's simply a matter of finding a way to make the numbers work. If you are Gonzaga, what are you sacrificing to join the Big 12, a major conference? Because you're not a fit in the SEC. That's just not going to happen, right? But are you a fit in the Big 10? I don't think they are. I think if you are Gonzaga, you've got to find a way to make yourself feel good with the money and the numbers, good with the access of joining the Big 12. Because at some point, I think financially it is going to become difficult for them to stay in the WCC. Because as I say in this world, every single day, we tend to obsess with how much money we are making. And you absolutely need to know how much money you're making. But more than that, you need to know how much money you're not making.
Mm-hmm.
You need to understand how much money you're not making. How much money is Gonzaga not making by not being in the Big 12? That's the question. That'll be the tipping point. Because the math in the WCC is pretty simple. You're not making as much as you feel like you should. But there's joining the Big 12 let's say you join as a basketball only. Does that make you the money you feel like you're deserved? Who are you, San Diego State? Is that the pro rata you deserve? Does that make you the money you deserve?
Huh?
I don't know.
I definitely think it makes the Big 12 head and shoulders the best basketball conference if Gonzaga's in there. I just don't know how it wouldn't be. And
I also think that is a very big question for the Big 12, because again, as we reported yesterday, and now several other people have picked it up, Duke and the Big 12. I think that is a marriage that the Big 12 would very much like to make. I do not have an indication that Duke would like to, but there is no doubt that Brett Yormark and the Big 12 are chasing Duke. There's just no question about that. And if you can get Duke, if you can get Louisville, if you can get, I think Virginia would be somebody that would be very difficult for the Big 12 to get, but they would love to add Virginia. If you can add those brands and you can add Gonzaga, you are the premier basketball league in this country, which again, and I'll continue to say it, and I hope that at some point we get credit for it. We probably won't. But as I've told you since day one, Brett Yormark's simple goal is to create two business behemoths, football and basketball. Brett Yormark wants a business unit in basketball that powers the Big 12. And basketball to the Big 12 is simply another revenue stream, and it's a big one. If you are the SEC, basketball's an afterthought. If you're the Big 10, look at their results. Basketball's an afterthought. If you are the Big 12, if you are the ACC, basketball is the priority. It is not an afterthought. It is the priority because you can't compete at the top of the table in football. And I think with some one-offs and some occasional success, TCU, Florida State, Clemson occasionally, outside of that, are you really competing week in and week out, season in and season out at the top of the college football world? Currently, you are not. Now, can you get there? Of course you can. And I think expansion and realignment can help you do that. But the inevitable truth is the Big 12 and the ACC, as long as it exists, have to be prolific basketball conferences. And right now, the two are by far the best basketball conferences in the country. You look at the success the ACC has had in the tournament this year, it's undeniable. You look at the best teams in the country, and I'll continue to carry the flag for Iowa State basketball, but you look at what's going on in the Big 12, and it is unequivocally right now the best basketball conference in the country. And I continue to hear, and I'll continue to say, Brett Yormark has his eyes set very near the top of the ACC table, and I believe that he is doing everything he can do to open up lines of communication to add Duke to the Big 12 if they become available and if the ACC melts down, and I don't see why you wouldn't do it.
Yeah, and I think it's that's the type of behavior you need to be having right now. I mean, I think that, you know, you would be naive if you're Brett Yormark to think that the other commissioners aren't doing the exact same thing. And I think that the Big 12 is and has shown an elite ability with Brett Yormark to go out and get partnerships done. And I think that, you know, this Duke situation, I think is a really good one for the Big 12. I think, you know, you look at the possibilities, you know, Duke and Gonzaga going to the same conference, I think is a recipe for success. No question about it. And I'm telling you, all of this stems from the concept of, you know, hey, if we're going to on some level accept the fact that we're not a prolific football conference, we're a good football conference, but we're not like the best in the land. And so because of that, we need to be the best in the land in basketball. That's where all this is coming from. And I think basketball kind of provides that foundation. It says, hey, you know, if Texas Tech cannot make a fool of themselves on the basketball court, if Baylor would actually beat somebody they should beat in Clemson, we're in a great spot right now. And we've added Arizona basketball for next year, right? Like
Colorado, Utah.
Like, so you start to see that, hey, maybe they don't have Duke and UNC and like these major nameplates, but you know, they do have Houston. They do have these other schools that are there.
I also go back to what the ultimate end goal here is. And the ultimate end goal here is to create a continental basketball power where in North America, and I think you have to put Mexico in this conversation, as much as I know a lot of people think that the Mexico contest for the Big 12 is, you know, laughable or a joke or an afterthought. It's truly not. Brett Yormark wants to own North America for college basketball. And going to Mexico City and going to Monterrey is a big part of that.
Yeah.
And I think that when you look at the way that Brett Yormark is building, does he have a legitimate shot to get Duke? Probably not. Does he have any shot, a legitimate shot to get Virginia? Probably not.
But I think that that's what we're saying now. I mean, imagine, because again, it's all about the circumstances. So if the ACC is melting down and there's chaos and teams are looking for stability, the big boys in the ACC are obviously going to be fine. They obviously understand, hey, we're going to wind up somewhere. What's the best case scenario? Yeah. So if that's the situation 2 years from now, and Brett Yormark has spent the last 2 years courting Duke and they have a great relationship, you can't tell me that doesn't help his chances. I mean, it has to.
I think that Duke and Carolina are very interesting pawns in the ACC situation, because when does the next break the grant of rights guy step up? When's the next lawsuit? When's the next voice to be heard? Bubba Cunningham is not a guy that sits on the sidelines and watches. And the athletic director at Carolina. Yeah. I think that at some point they've got to get off the bench and get on the field and start playing the game.
But I think UNC and Bubba Cunningham are uniquely aware that you can't just go public with this stuff. That doesn't work. You've seen it twice.
These are all these moves are about opening back channel conversations.
But my point with UNC
there's no doubt
they're,
about
they're
that.
smarter than the folks at Florida State and Clemson, with all due respect. They understand, hey, if we're going to make a move, it needs to be like Carol Folt at USC. It needs to be nobody knows this is coming, but we know it's coming, and 8 to 10 other schools know it's coming, and we're going to roll it out as soon as we have the support. And that's how it's going to happen. I'm telling you.
I'm really interested to see what North Carolina values. What does UNC value? Is it money or is it prominence? Because I think if you go to the Big Ten, you're going to get a windfall. There's no doubt about that. You're going in as a full share member. You're not coming in at a discount.
Right.
I don't think there's any doubt about that. But if you go to the Big Ten, are you not the basketball power of the Big Ten? I think if you can get $100 million a year and you immediately install yourself as the premier basketball brand of the Big Ten.
If you're UNC.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if you're UNC, you're the best basketball team in the Big Ten. And I think
is that worth more than being the best basketball team in the Big 12?
Yeah.
I think it is.
Absolutely is. And I think that
I think it is.
I think that a cherry on top of that thought is that and again, the Big Ten obviously has added these schools from the Pac-12, so the conference got better on the football field. I think everybody agrees with that. But even at UNC with their football program, like, they would still be, in my opinion, a top half team. They probably wouldn't contend to win that conference. But I do think, like, if you go, so if you go, let's just say Ohio State, Oregon, we'll throw Michigan in there just to be nice, and let's say Penn State just to be nice. Okay. Those are the top quarter. UNC is going to be right there in that second cut. And UNC in the Big Ten would absolutely contend to get into the college football playoff on the back
I would
end.
agree with that. I would agree with that.
So for them, like, yeah, the Big Ten makes a ton of sense. You're gonna be the best team in basketball, and you're gonna make some money in football. I don't know why you wouldn't do that. And that's why I say for the Big 12, you got to take a run at Duke. You have to, because at that point, if you can get Duke, you can get Gonzaga.
But if you're the Big 12, aren't you trying to get both and you're offering them unequal revenue?
Probably, yeah. Yeah.
I think there's just no way to get around that.
I think if you're the Big 12, you got to find a way to get a nameplate that's respected nationally, like Duke, or like, somebody on that level, because you don't have that right now. Like all my people in the comments section yesterday talking about, oh, well, Texas and Oklahoma, and you said Texas is the biggest school.
Yeah, can you stop pissing off Oklahoma fans?
Oklahoma fan, you need to know your place. This is not a numbers
That's
conversation.
That's not how I would go about not pissing off Oklahoma.
Well, this is how I'm going about it. This is not a numbers conversation. This is a brand recognition conversation. Texas is why you got into the SEC. Yep. Let's be very clear. The SEC didn't add Texas, or didn't add you without Texas. And by the way, Texas has been the face of that conference for how long? Has Oklahoma had success? Did Lincoln Riley do great things? Do you have an absolute keg of Heisman trophies in that conference? Yes. Yes, you do. Yeah. Absolutely. 100%. I'm not saying Oklahoma sucks. What I'm saying is that from a business standpoint, from a revenue standpoint, Texas was the top dog in that conference, whether they won or didn't win. Because when they weren't winning, everybody loved it. And when they were winning, everybody hated it, which means they were making money either way.
Listen, I think there is a lot to be hashed out here. Where the cart is not ahead of the horse. It's like 5 miles down the road.
Yeah.
The horse ain't got to the cart yet, right? So I think when we look at what the Big 12 is doing, I think certainly there is a lot of interest on the side of the Pac-2 here as to what's going to happen with the ACC, because again, the statements that Kirk Schultz and Oregon State and Washington State and the conference on the whole put out yesterday were all about our student athletes competing at the highest level. So that's their focus. Are Oregon State and Washington State good fits in the Big 12? I don't know. Is this a league that wants 24 teams? I don't think so. I don't. Would you rather have Louisville or Oregon State? I'd rather have Louisville.
Right now, you'd rather have Louisville.
Would you rather have, I don't know, who's a Pitt or Washington State? I'd rather have Pitt, because I've got Pitt, West Virginia all day long. And it's an awfully difficult argument to make. And I'm struggling to understand. I'm struggling to understand the value of Washington State and Oregon State in today's climate.
And why is
here
that?
on the 26th of March? Because I don't think they bring much value to the Big 12 today.
And why is that?
Because they haven't won on the field. You're exactly right. And they don't bring money.
And you know what the sad part is? Oregon State actually was winning on the field. Like, they didn't win college football playoff games, but they were a problem in the Pac-12. Like, you went to Corvallis, it was over for you. You were done. Like, Reeser, that stadium at night, especially on a Friday, it's over for you. You're not winning there. And I think that's, it's great, but it's also part of the problem. Like, I hate to say this, but Oregon State, like, if you're going to get over, you have to be at least getting into the playoff. Like, and I know, you haven't seen a 12-team format yet. Obviously, it's only been 4 teams to this point. So it's been incredibly difficult. I'm not saying that you should have expected to get in, but I think when you're Oregon State or brand on Oregon State's level, that's what you have to do.
Yeah, I think it's fascinating, you guys. I think we are watching our fandom change right before our eyes. And I think it is something that I would really encourage you to keep an eye on, because the last thing I'll say before we get to the comment section here on the Monty Show, presented by the Advocates, theadvocates.com, the last thing I'll say is they're going to expand the NCAA tournament.
Yeah.
And I've been beating this drum since the new year, and nobody wants to believe me. They're going to expand the NCAA tournament. It's inevitable. It is going to happen.
Yeah.
And if you are Duke, if you're Carolina, John Calipari seems to be saying that he's going to be back next year. And I get it. He's got a $30 million buyout. But if you're the Blue Bloods, you better be in a position to leverage more money if the NCAA tournament gets expanded.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that happens now, then after the ACC, before the ACC. I don't know. But when it happens, Brett Yormark is putting himself in a position to leverage more units, to make more money on the NCAA tournament, to make more money on Kansas City for the Big 12 basketball tournament. These things are not insignificant. These conversations with people like Duke. And if you're Brett Yormark, I have not once questioned his methodology, because it's worked splendidly. Why would he not be reaching out to Duke, Carolina? Why would you not be reaching out to the Virginias? If I am Brett Yormark, I've already made calls to Tallahassee. I've already made calls to Clemson. I'm calling everybody. Do they answer the phone? I hope so. Will I ever talk to them? I hope so. But if I don't, they're going to damn well know I want to talk to them.
Yeah.
I'm going to make every effort I can, because, again, the question I have is, what's the worst that can happen?
But are they going to say no?
What's the worst that can happen? That it just is. It is, in my mind, this is exactly the guy you want on top of the Big 12.
And by the way, he's not distracted by litigation, which I might point out the ACC's got lots of right now.
Yeah, I'm just telling you. All right. The comment section, as always. Boy, Caitlin Clark had me nervous last night on Prize Picks. Now, I only won 2 or 3 on a flex play, which is the beautiful thing about Prize Picks. You can go hardcore,
stay hard,
like Jake does, and lose all the time when you don't play a flex pick. A flex play. A flex play is, hey, here's three more or less, right? So last night, I think it was 36.5. I got good old Caitlin Clark at 36.5
now,
last night.
Is that your bookie's line or your interpreter's line?
Well, no, that's what Shohei told me.
Oh, okay.
So,
got it.
Anyway, the point is, I got her at 36.5, and she came through. Now, unfortunately, Devin Booker, and we got to have a talk about the Suns. Devin Booker's pissing me off. Like, I look at Book last night, 3 of 10 from 3. 3 of 10 from 3.
Including that brick to end the game.
I had him at 47.5 last night.
Uh-huh.
It's the Spurs. I'm taking more. 36 points. We're good.
Yeah.
6 rebounds. We're good. 4 dimes.
So he winds up at 36 or 46 instead of 47.
Just one more bucket. One of those threes goes down. I lose.
Devin.
Thankfully, the season's not over. The Suns are disappointing. The Suns are absolutely disappointing. And of course, I would like to thank the Utah Jazz. Utah Jazz. Thank you for not playing any defense.
My name is Luca.
Because my guy Luca.
Your guy.
My guy Luca.
What, you live on the second floor now too?
Why do you have to say things like that?
My name is Luca.
48.5. He drops 52 for me last night.
Stay home.
29, 12, and 13. Luka came through. Anybody watch Larry Markkinen? Anybody watch my guy John Collins? I almost took John Collins last night.
What about your boy Key?
Yeah, he's all right. He's cooled off a little bit.
Yeah.
John Collins is your prize picks. He's your over-under on prize picks. Because John Collins, it seems like every single night is 27.5 points. Oh, more or less. I took more last night, and he had 21 points, 11 rebounds, and 2 dimes.
Yeah.
What did I tell you about JC? That's your guy. So I won 2 out of 3 last night. Thanks a lot, Book, you prick.
Hey, bada boom, bada bing.
It was awesome. I won $25. Very happy with it. That's the best part about Prize Picks. You don't have to be perfect. You just got to get 2 out of 3.
Yeah.
Download the Prize Picks app. Use the promo code Monty, M-O-N-T-Y, to get 100% deposit matching. There's a link in the description below, or just go to your app store, look for Prize Picks. Let's play the tournament together, you guys. The NCAA tournament on Prize Picks is great. I personally love it. The Masters is coming up here in a couple of weeks. It's already April.
Yeah, bro.
Do you guys understand it's March 26th today? Good Friday on Friday. We'll be off on Friday for Good Friday. Easter Sunday is this Sunday. How is it already Easter?
Yeah, bro.
In God's name, image, and likeness.
Craziness. It's already Easter.
Yeah.
It is already Easter.
Yeah.
Get on the Prize Picks, download the app, use the promo code Monty, M-O-N-T-Y, Monty, to get 100% deposit matching. Northeast Ohio Boise State fan, a member for 5 months.
Let's go, baby.
Gonzaga.
Hey, Gonzaga.
Gonzaga.
Yeah.
Gonzaga.
Yeah.
Gonzaga.
To the Big 12 gets them a ton of money.
Gonzaga.
I believe that it would be very good for them.
Gonzaga.
I believe it'd be very good for them, and I'm a believer. Matt
I like
Ritson,
Gonzaga.
I'm sure you do, for $5. Kyle Smith leaves Washington State for Stanford basketball jobs. I'm curious where Stanford and Cal end up at
They're
the end
not
of this
gonna
whole
be in
thing.
The ACC a long time, dude.
Well,
There's
if
no
the
way.
ACC's intact, they're going to be there.
Well, yeah, I know. Well, you agreed.
Ultimately, how bad is this for SMU? Oof.
Yeah.
I think Calford, I'm interested to see what happens to them.